Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Morning, Oksana.
Hi, Oksana. Can you hear us?
She can't.
Sometimes she usually calls in to,
If she
Yeah.
doesn't,
She's got some touchy
she
equipment.
got some technical.
it's time to upgrade. It's time to upgrade, Oksana.
I wasn't at the last CIC meeting, but I know that it was, from what I read, probably one of the best ones we've had in a while.
Is that because you weren't there? I'm just
No,
asking.
Just
Putting it
because
out
of the
there, so.
content and the discussion about reworking the committee. And so I guess, I don't know if we were going to continue that discussion today from last week's or last month's meeting. What was the
I have a
plan
comment
there?
I just would like to add, in kicking it around the room and stuff, one thing that didn't come up is a break. The committee take a break, whether for a month, 2 months, regroup. Think, your net group to do it and see what happens, come up, like a sabbatical,
Mhm.
Or go to just monthly meetings instead of.
Twice a
twice
month.
Twice. Mhm. I just thought I had.
One of the things that last year, it was really the CIC that helped bring together the strategic planning session.
Session.
Even if it's not, it could be set up any number of ways if you want to continue or even kind of repurposed or whatever, because it is a committee that's established by resolution. It's not in the town code. So the charge could be specific to whatever we feel like the needs are to make a recommendation to the town board and whatever the town board agrees with. But, maybe it's not even a monthly thing. Maybe it's a quarterly or something to help kind of a check-in, kind of what's going on with the comprehensive plan and then a strategic planning or whatever the case. But it could be any number of different things. I know that Oksana, she can actually
I don't know. She's
communicate with us or not, but I know that she's also shared an interest in stepping away from economic development, so if there is a way to, maybe there's some different ways to go about re-looking at all of this.
stepping away from economic development.
Leaving
The-
that.
Got
Yeah.
Mhm.
How well attended and accomplished is the economic development?
The team hasn't met in over a year,
Maybe
Really?
it could be morphed into this.
or to the LDC. That was, I think, one of the other things that had come up.
Who is on that committee?
It's a pretty extensive
Is it?
list. Yeah. I think if that was really, it was a committee, and I think that there are certain people that are technically appointed by the board that we'd have to look at the organizational resolution, maybe a half dozen or so, but I know that the invite list goes to like 60-ish.
There she
So,
is.
is Oksana there?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Loud and clear.
Why
Did you hear
haven't,
us talking about you?
I'm sorry, what?
You hear us talking about you?
I heard you.
Okay.
Yes. I really think with the economic development team, we started with identifying some of the challenges that are some of the businesses in the town had. And we went through tours and concept mapping and then form-based code. I think now you really need a professional business person to take the lead, and or the LDC. So that is my opinion. What do you guys think?
Well, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems to me the LDC is led by the nose by the city. Um, I know there are town people on it, but I don't hear much about what's happening in the town for economic development.
Come to a meeting.
We also have a large block in Uptown that is in the process of being developed, and I think it needs some leadership. I mean, not that you're not leading it, but you understand what I'm
Actually,
saying.
I understand what you're saying, but I completely disagree with you. Come to a meeting. I would say that the town is actually driving most of the conversation at the LDC
Yes.
meetings. Yeah, and a lot of it does pertain to Uptown, but there's a lot of effort on that connection of Uptown all the way to the lakefront. Because let's face it, the average person, whether it's a tourist or a resident, when they think of Canandaigua, they think of the experience all the way down to the
And Main
lakefront.
Street.
They don't look at the municipal boundaries and
Yeah.
those types of things.
Right.
The one thing that does get left out, and I 100% admit it, is Cheshire. But there's a challenge there, right? We don't have sewer in Cheshire. And so when you talk about economic development, it's really nothing more than just infill of the storefronts, because you're not going to have large economic development without sewer.
Mhm. And I go to Cheshire all the time. They have a great little diner there.
Yep.
I can tell you, people that live in Cheshire, they don't want sewers. They really don't want them.
Well, because they can't afford it, Karen.
Well, Oksana, I lived on Laura Lane, and guess how much harassment we had when we first moved to Laura Lane. I mean, consistently. And that's how I started going to town board meetings, because I was constantly fighting the town board about septic systems and their approval of septic systems. And we couldn't afford it either, but it happened.
Well, I don't know. What does the town want to do? Do they want to just say we're putting sewer in and who cares whether you can afford it or not?
That ship has.
We've,
Yeah.
Right.
That ship has
not
left the
happening.
port and it's out at
2
ocean.
meetings shot that down, so yeah, that would be definitely, we brought that ship, again, that would be the Titanic. Yeah,
True, that's actually
it
very
would-
true.
You might
Yeah.
want to be a little more diplomatic.
Wow,
No, there's-
it's
no,
true
there's-
though.
You don't
I
want
don't
me
want to
talk-
waste the time.
You don't want me talking to them.
we do have now, speaking as a visitor today, glad I could make it. We do have the bid
Yes.
that's being created for Uptown,
Mhm.
which can help drive some of that
Yes,
development.
and I know that.
We do have a brand new county developer who is very, I would say, more boots on the ground than our past economic developer, and very interested in, I mean, he's an electrician by trade, and he understands the infrastructure, and he understands the ground up ideas, and he is, really trying to get in touch with the whole county. But that's another resource that we probably didn't have before at the same level that we might have now. Because he's very interested in, the grassroots, and understands what you need.
When he was here at our meeting, he seemed very committed.
Mhm.
Just, listening, his feedback, Karen and things like that. I trust that a lot was accomplished. And if you step away, I think from everything that we're doing, it's geared towards
No,
economic
this
development.
is-
Economic development doesn't necessarily mean having to put up, 4 or 5 story buildings up. When Terry was here, they talked about infrastructure.
Oh, right.
And Matt Horn, I thought, gave us a good presentation and insight on it.
No,
So,
what I was referring to was the committee that we have here. And you say you have a lot of people on that committee, but you also have people on the LDC. And I was referring more to overlap rather than not having any economic development. That's what I was referring to.
There's definitely overlap, for sure. But the one thing that doesn't happen, that Oksana did a great job in leading the economic, is the business retention stuff. And that's something that the committee did a really good job with, going and visiting businesses, letting them know that we care about them, that we're glad that they're in the town of Canandaigua. That I think was a huge highlight that the economic development team was providing, that the LDC is not going to do that.
And I believe that is where their calling is right now. And I believe you probably need that now more than ever, because there is infrastructure type. I can't help but think of Pactiv
Mhm.
and not having any sidewalks on that road. I just, and seeing messages from people who work at Pactiv. I need a ride to work at such and such a time, from, downtown, wherever. And another business out on Route 21 toward Chapin has the same thing with their employees. So I could see our economic development committee working on the adjunct to the businesses, the current businesses, because you're right, retention is really critical. Yesterday, I was in Rochester and I went past the Paychecks building on whatever that road is.
It's empty, isn't it?
It's for sale.
Yeah.
It's totally empty.
The office
And
space, yeah.
that used to be filled. I mean, they used to be parked on the side road there. So I hate the thought of something happening like that to, say, Augustus, or I don't think it would have to happen at Pactiv, but there are businesses like that within the town.
Well, the industrial ones like Pactiv, Acoustos, even Artisan Meats, right? Even to some extent, a little bit smaller scale than that, they're getting the business retention visits from the IDA. The smaller businesses, the retail businesses, the motorcycle shops, the glass doctor, the distillery, those are the businesses, they don't get any attention at all from the IDA.
Right.
Those are the ones that are,
And those are the
are
ones
vulnerable.
that
Yep.
we need to listen to, because what, they're the ground floor, they're the basis for economic development.
They need an advocate.
Yes, they do.
In the last 6 months, I've met with two. One was the Finger Lakes Barbecue, who was
Oh, in the plaza.
suffering
Mhm.
tremendously. And the comment was about other businesses, other large, very large scale, businesses, enterprises in the region that get a ton of money. And then they were just struggling to get enough money to, some of the COVID money that they wanted to get. So a couple phone calls, a couple discussions, and their application went through. The same thing with businesses, some restaurant down on East Lake Road. They were struggling with the same thing. They're like roadblock after roadblock after roadblock. And my fear too is they were, eventually they're just gonna say it's not worth it. Putting their hands up. So those are the people that, and they're on a better path right now as well. So those are the ones that even a helping hand saying, yeah, we'll communicate your concerns, we'll help push things along, we'll make sure you don't get left behind, any of that.
So on my county committee, economic development committee, I'm the chairperson of the small business committee, and we're rewriting our charter, so to speak, right now. But it's really, what you're saying is very relevant, because there was money available through the CARES Act on the county, and I think there were 25 spots, 20 or 25 originally. There were 60 applications, and the state is not going to extend the funding. But to see all these small businesses, and including some of the food trucks that operate year round, looking for help was a real eye opener to us. And our committee has pretty much sat dormant for a period of time because there was a lot of other activity in the county. But now it seems to have settled down and quieted. Do you see a lot of activity,
with the,
economic development activity?
yeah.
Yeah,
And
we
it,
are in our
and it
department.
depends, it's at various levels, because I mean, truthfully, for me, I'm having conversations with the Custos. but periodically I'm having a conversation with a small restaurant that nobody else is
Yeah.
calling on. So it's a huge spectrum, and it's hard when you have that large of a spectrum, right? Some of the challenges that Acustos has or the Pactiv have are much, much different than the challenges of the small mom and pop, right?
That's right.
And the other thing that happens is the county does have a consultant that they have to help with some of that COVID cares money and that sort of stuff.
Ostrander or
Yeah,
something.
Nicola. And she's doing a good job, but I'll give you an example. I've had 4 or 5 meetings now between her and Quail Summit. And that's another example of a business that was extremely impacted, right? I mean, let's not miss it. It's a business. They've got to make money to operate. It's a not-for-profit, but it's still a business. They were severely impacted and they've struggled. And so now they're working with her through that. They haven't gotten some of the money that they thought that they would be able to get, even for like the ventilation. You think about the basic things that we all kept hearing from the governor at the time about the needs for relative to COVID. And now they're trying to figure out, okay, what does the future look for even for them? So they're kind of doing their own strategic planning. What does healthcare look like in that portion of Canandaigua that we've actually talked about here? The hospital, and you factor in the doctor's offices and the medical buildings and that whole area. What does that look like? And so Nicola's working with them. So very, very different aspects. I mean, we have new businesses coming. We've got any number of new things. We've got Popeyes, right?
We have
a big one.
Popeyes. I mean,
And we've got-
we have Popeyes, obviously the bigger ones, Five Below, but there's a new consignment shop up
Right.
by Tom Walls.
Mhm,
There's,
yeah, I saw that.
and it would be great to have, when we see them come in, to be able to say, all right, welcome to Canandaigua. Here's, here you go, economic development team. Here's the new business. Let's, what can we do to welcome them in? Because we do see many, and there are some small, very small
There
ones,
are.
and
There are.
but there's really big too.
You think about, like, I'll give you an example of the bubble tea place, right? So
Mhm.
that's
Yep.
a small business, but it's doing well, it's operating, but again, just to be able to connect with them. Now, like during COVID, one of the challenges they had was being able to provide their product, right? So we let them put a trailer out in front of the place so that they could be outside to stay open, to stay afloat. And I feel like those are some of the things that we do to be more helpful, maybe what some other municipalities do to help our small businesses, but staying in touch with them. I mean, unless they reach out to us, that's one of the things that's missing in the business retention visits, especially for the smaller businesses like that.
So could we revamp the economic development team and have their focus change slightly to support and retention versus enticing and
Yeah, that's a great question.
That is a great
And I think
question.
Alexander was getting ready to say, I mean, like, for instance, I'll tell you, there's probably not a week that goes by that I don't talk to Greater Rochester Enterprise. GRE is a international entity that attracts businesses to the Greater Rochester area. And they're teamed up with the Regional Economic Development Council, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But what happens is they spend a lot of effort to make connections worldwide, and then they hear of businesses that are looking to locate, and then what they do is they spearhead the effort for our region to compete not only with other regions in the state of New York, but other states, other countries, everything else. So we get like these, like one of the bigger ones that I shared with you guys was Project Kent, right? So we get these project nicknames that we kind of sort of know a little bit about it, but not a lot about it. And they're looking for a site selection. So most of the time, the calls that I get from GRE is they're looking for 5, 10,000, 15,000 square feet of flex space, a building that's already available that they could just plug into. Most of the businesses aren't willing to go through the process of building a building, the greenfield development and all that. Occasionally you get one, but very few. Most of them want to go into an existing building. They want loading bays. They want X number of PSI. They want in the water. They want to know what the gas is. They need 12-foot ceilings. They're very specific what they're looking for, and we get that list. And then if you have something, you let them know. One of the things I'm super excited about in Uptown is Dom Lasher in the group with Cook Enterprises. Section 1 or phase 1 includes flex space buildings. So then,
20,000,
Yeah.
20,000 square foot.
and I think they can be split up, right? So when I get that call, oh, you need 5,000 square feet of flex space. I got 4 or 5,000 because I got a 20,000 square foot flex building. I got 4 or 5,000 that I can take a 5,000 business. But until, that's really going to be the first one that we've had, because we don't have empty buildings in the town of Canandaigua. I mean, we're very fortunate. in that regard. We just don't have them. For the longest time, the largest empty building we had, and it wasn't even really empty, was Randy's Collision Shop that we were trying to market for different things, because there wasn't anything else available
Label on building.
in the city.
Yeah.
The city's a
So
different. story.
Karen,
An animal.
Yes.
So Karen, I never said to get rid of the economic development team. What I am saying is I don't think I am the right person today to take on that leadership role. We need a professional business person. I mean, there's too much work. And, you know, we had the idea years ago to form a sort of a bid for the Uptown, and that has happened. But I have not heard anything that the whoever is in charge of the bid that is doing anything. And
That's
like
my
Doug
fault. I
said,
got COVID. Part of it- We had a bid meeting and I got COVID and couldn't attend, so we canceled the meeting.
Another thing we can blame on COVID.
so like Doug said, you know, we need data about what buildings we have available, what square footage, and all of that. And I thought the LDC was going to do that. I don't know, Doug, is that true?
So one of the things that the LDC is working on is available parcels for development in both the town and the city. And that would actually even be beneficial. The first draft that came back at us, the folks that were putting it together, and they were well-meaning, but there were issues with every parcel that they identified. For instance, some of the parcels they identified in the town of Canandaigua were in the strategic farmland protection area. Well, that's not where we're looking to put economic development initiatives, right? Or there wasn't the water or sewer, and so we had to push pause on that and go back and kind of refine that. So that is working through a process, but it's taking longer than really what it should. In terms of the parcels, the inventory in terms of the buildings, we just don't have it. I mean, literally, we have 3 plazas in the town of Canandaigua, what I call the Big Lots Plaza. I don't know what the real name of it is. What is the real name of it? The Roseland Plaza. Roseland's across the street.
Roseland's across the street.
The big lots.
And
Yeah,
we
right.
call it Big
It's
Lots. in our
And then
office.
the 332.
Raymore and
Raymore.
Raymore
Yeah,
Flanagan.
well, that's a separate building. That's a
Yeah, I know.
completely
Yes.
separate parcel and everything.
Canandaigua sign in front of that by the billboard.
Yes.
Yeah, did you like that?
The new billboard going up.
Jared's
yeah.
favorite sign. And then,
Sorry.
and then the 332 one, but the 332 one that has been plagued by a lot of vacancies for years and years and years. They've done a great job in repurposing that. I'm pretty sure that's 100% full. I'm almost certain it's 100%
Yeah, with the
full.
new,
Yeah, with
stop.
everything that's
Yep.
there now.
Yep.
The Roseland Plaza had some vacancies, but with Five Below going in there, that takes up a big chunk of that. And then
And Ollie's
Ollie's
at the nail
Bargain
shop.
Outlet, and then there's, what's the new one in the corner? I can't think of. the
Five
name of it.
Below, Ollie's.
The one all the way down at the other end. is
Next to
empty.
Joanne's.
How about
Right.
the east end of that is like what used to be a brokerage house? And then
That's gonna be the.
That'll be
that's gonna
Popeyes.
Popeyes. That's the new
Oh,
pop,
that
that's being
old
torn down.
credit union bank thing there?
Yeah, that's all being torn down.
they're gonna knock it down.
Yes, they're not gonna use it.
Yeah.
Where's
Oh, that
It's-
beautiful brick.
It's not, it's
mean
not.
Ponderosa?
It's-
How about-
No,
yeah.
not Ponderosa. No, that's in the
Ponderosa.
city.
That's city.
Oh, that's
That
right.
does need to be
Well,
nice.
we need to get on
Yeah,
that. to do
yeah, they
something.
gotta knock that.
Yeah, People's, the
Where-
Halloween store and
The
Joanne
Halloween store
Fabrics
is
is in
vacant
there.
there, that old
Yeah, there might be a
Halloween
spot there, because the
There is.
Halloween store kind of pops in and out of there,
It
right?
does.
So. but there's really not a lot of
Mm-mm.
vacant space. There's a building on Brickyard Road right now that's currently got a tenant in it that I'm working with the landowner right now that he'd like to sell it. He's got a couple of offers on it and maybe bringing in another manufacturing business, but there's very few buildings that aren't already full.
Chuck Potter's buildings,
Yeah, there's some
Yeah.
space once in a while in through there, but they're
I
they're
think
pretty
those are
full.
mostly full.
I mean, that's where the Glass Doctor moved over there from the Big Lots Plaza. You've got the distillery in there. You've got a boat place in there. You've got, yeah, there's.
how about the parcel that Peter German owned? Is that gonna be repurposed?
Well, it was just recently subdivided, right? But I mean, it's for sale, but that's the trouble is most of the businesses don't want the aggravation of dealing with construction.
Building it. Yeah.
That's
So,
where.
Doug-
Yeah, Oksana.
So Doug, I never heard the comment back about the Uptown Bid because everyone was laughing.
Oh. So we
What is
had,
happening with that?
yeah, so the Uptown Bid has been created. The town board is the entity for that. We need to have essentially our organizational meeting and get going. We had one scheduled and then it had to be canceled. So we've just got to reschedule that and plan for the aspects. They'll be in the 23 budget. There will be a new fund that we just created for the Uptown Bid. And there will be revenue and expenses in the 23 budget relative to the Uptown Bid. So.
Okay, so does anybody on the CIC board want to be the chair of the economic development team? Sal?
Everybody's jumping up and down,
Wow.
trying to raise
Did
their
you-
hand.
Did you just say Sal? Oh, wow. Okay, I can't tell what
Wow,
you said.
wow, yeah.
Okay, I thought she said Sal.
I thought she said Sal too. I thought she was
I heard that
volunteering.
too,
Sal.
No, he's been there.
Yeah, you've done that, been there,
Few
done
times,
that.
yeah.
Mhm.
So, well, we don't know who else on that, really active on that team. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I think
The
it's
team
kind of
isn't
inactive at this point, so we'd have to reactivate it.
Yeah, maybe
Yeah,
the next
Karen,
meeting, reactivate, and
the
go from there.
the meetings that we had last year, I mean, there were like maybe 3 people that attended. Yeah, so I don't know.
I think we also, Oksana, because the economic development team was really the group that we kind of utilized to get the form-based code across the finish line and everything. And I think
Yes,
maybe if it went back to more of a business retention, we might see some new interest for some new faces or versus working on code.
right.
It might be appropriate with 60 members for that distribution list. Sometimes things get too large
Mhm.
and then it might be time to, like Sal said, hit that reset button.
How
to-
many business owners are on that committee? Are
Yeah,
there,
but
are there
someone should take
many?
a look
Oh,
at this.
I mean, what,
There's an interesting
there a good
list. There's a
mix?
mixture. I don't know. We'd have to look at it. There was a mixture. There was a mixture of business and organization leaders across the town.
okay.
Couple of questions I have. With Chris DeBolt,
Mhm.
the inventory that they're doing, is that just on properties? Is it
Housing.
businesses?
Housing.
Housing.
Oh, it's just
Just
housing.
housing.
Okay. All right. Then the other thing, are we looking to or thinking about incorporating economic development into the CIC or the other way around? Or are we just forgetting about CIC?
Well, I think we need to kind of
We need to
bring,
go back to
circle
that.
back
Yeah.
since it's
to where we
9:30.
started.
Right, where we started, i.e. what do we want to do with the CIC? Because we do have to, if we are going to move forward with the CIC, our agenda topic was budget request for 2023. So that really kind of,
Yeah.
we need to figure out our direction in order to get, if we are going to go forward.
I had, after the last meeting, I would say it was almost evenly split between the folks that reached out to me that said that they agreed with letting it just kind of go at the end of this year, and those that said, we think that it needs to exist in some manner And it was almost evenly split, I think, between the people that reached out.
You're
to
talking
me.
about the CIC.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
CIC members and different people.
My,
that
my
are-
opinion is it should exist. We operate as a town with a master plan. And the master, I mean, it wouldn't be a master plan if it didn't have goals, short-term, long-term, whatever. I believe if you let it go, you're going to fall into where we were, what, 10, 12 years ago, where there essentially were no goals. You know, we just kind of wandered along and went by board meeting to board meeting, where there'd be a few fights here and there and a few strong words, and nothing was really accomplished, in my opinion. I think you need a driving force. Nothing against the town board, but they need to hear the voice of the people. And I think if you get a cross-section of people on a board like this, and I agree, I think we need to meet twice monthly, but at least once monthly, and keep these goals in mind, because, you know, they're not short-term goals. These are something every town should live by, having goals like that. And I can tell you on a yearly basis, new things come to mind with each of those goals, on accomplishing each of those goals. And we need to be cognizant of that. I mean, in the past 2 years, we have seen businesses like Paychecks go from having a huge facility to nothing. I mean, not that they're nothing, but to having no physical.
That's a change in work
Culture.
environment. or
Exactly.
work culture or whatever.
Exactly.
And technology, which we're not gonna change.
Okay, but I come back to, Tom, you're absolutely right, and I brought this up at the last meeting. Yes, but the CIC is still operating as if it was 2018, right?
Mhm.
What, if the CIC is going to exist, and maybe it meets once a month in that traditional 2018 model, maybe the other points, it's got to be something remote, some sort of communication, some sort of more interactive that could be at other oddball times, evening, 24 hours a day through the use of websites, something. Maybe there's more of citizen engagement,
Mhm.
right? A real focus on citizen engagement for that, in place of that second meeting a month.
So I think that's pretty much key, you know, about reshaping, redeveloping the CIC. We all know communication is one of the toughest things
I agree.
to,
I
you
agree.
know, to.
And I agree with what you say. It
Yeah.
needs more interaction between this and the community. And God, it needs young people, needs people who are capable of thinking of, you know, communications and internet and that's, you know, roads, infrastructure, et cetera, because all of that is changing. And you can't have a bunch of old people sitting around talking about sewers in Cheshire, as an example. Even Oksana, I believe in sewer systems, but
So do I.
But, you know, we need to start thinking in terms of what my 5-month-old great grandchild is going to be facing, and move the town in a direction forward that supports the youth of our town and where they're going to be, because we're not all going to be here.
So if the, go on.
I would add with that too. I still feel like I'm on the younger side some days. I just turned 50 last year.
Oh, you're young.
I'll be rolling into my 50s coming up, you know, I'm heading into those full speed. But, and no offense, and don't take this the wrong way, but I agree with what you're saying, to get that new, young blood, fresh perspective. Because I love everybody in here and the time and effort that you put in, but you guys serve on so many committees and so many groups. It's really important to have some of that, and it's hard, try to recruit new people to come in and do this, and it's hard because I went through it. you're raising a family, you're working, you're doing everything that you can to try to make it. And it's hard to have that meeting time, maybe a
Right.
quarterly meeting in person and then remote or other activities throughout the other months at different times, like Doug had said, different oddball times, evenings, maybe a weekend thing or something like that. That might bring in more people because a lot of people are hamstrung to, they're struggling to find childcare for work, let alone get here to do something like this. That might be just really reimagining and rethinking it.
I think piggybacking on that and with Doug, the way that we're communicating is different. The way young people communicate is different. It's Instagram. It's social media,
Yeah.
right? And I'm not saying we cut out the meetings, but to get our youth involved we
We have
need
to
to
use
do
different
that, but
means,
we
I
need to
agree.
do it
I
differently,
agree.
right?
Yeah.
And there is a gap in community engagement, absolutely.
I agree with you.
And it starts at the high school level or the middle school, and we've talked about this, about that lack of, and they have no idea what's happening in their community.
Civic involvement,
Yeah,
which
it
is
starts early, so then they
going
can
down the
vote,
wayside. Yeah.
we can get, it's
Vote
just
and
a,
participate.
right.
So the topic for today was supposed to be 2023 budget request.
Right, so
Yeah.
here we are, we're back
We're
there,
back,
yes.
But that's exactly where we're at, right?
Yes.
So maybe the CIC wants to make a budget request, put in a budget request for expenses, money for citizen engagement.
Yes,
And then maybe in early 23, truthfully, maybe it's as simple as we put together an RFP and release it and see what kind of proposals we get from different entities that may help us with citizen engagement and then evaluate those, right?
I
there's
think
tools,
that's a
there are
great-
Good idea.
programs that do this.
I know there are.
Yeah.
And I think it's great because I don't feel connected to the younger generation. You might feel connected, but really, it'd be great to have a couple of high school students or, we have a college here, college students.
You're absolutely right.
For crying out
It's
loud.
not,
That's so
speaking of
fun.
technology, it's not listening to.
You're right,
You
that,
can't speak to it. You gotta push the right button.
That's
Bunch
right.
of old people.
we know our work at home.
Back to
Karen, it's
that,
like
while you're
you.
doing that, back to that question of to be or not to be. I mean, I'm not a member of the committee. I would like to at some point. But I was attracted to it because of its integrative function. That's what I see as critical. How we do it is another question. But is there any other committee besides the town board that's seeking to integrate everything that's going on? This committee is a place of integration, and that's a function that we don't want to lose.
I agree with that.
You're spot on. I can't think of another committee that almost is an overarching umbrella like the town board that has at least an understanding of what's happening in all of these other sections other than the CIC.
Yeah.
It also seems like the CIC is right on the edge of economic development. Anything that we talk about, that we do somehow gets tied into economic development. But I think it's, there's the line, we have to step across it to, start to develop these things, the integration and try and recruit young people.
And that might be what the RFP can
I
do.
don't know, man.
Because if you have, if there was an Instagram presence pushing things out, pushing content out,
Mhm.
and we get kids to sign up and something like that,
Yeah.
to people to sign up for that, if they created TikToks about things going out around the town, just stuff like that. You could do
Absolutely.
a TikTok and you could do a
Exactly.
dance and sing
Yeah,
or something,
Yes.
and that could go out and it would be viral and everybody, you know what I'm saying? So
Yes.
things like that,
You're
to make
absolutely
that-
right.
to make that connection. They're all the time, they're on that doing those
Yeah.
things. So maybe even bringing in some young kids to be the content creators for the committee. That might be how you suck them in and draw them in. It's like, okay, I don't really get the overarching discussions, but maybe you get somebody who's interested in some of that social media. I'm looking at stuff for my son right now. We're doing college visits out west at the beginning of August. and he wants to do communications. And all of the
Hmm.
social media communications, that's a major. You
Oh, I know.
Majors all throughout,
Yeah,
and you have that, maybe some kids would want that experience to say, hey, I did social content for the town of Canandaigua, we get it. Other than the RFP helping create it, they're on the committee, there's no expense, they're doing it as, and it counts as service hours for what they need, so that might be figuring that out, getting those kids in.
Several years ago, we had an intern that came to the town and did communications.
From a college.
Yeah, it was through, he was working on his Master of Public Administration, so it was through the New York ICMA,
Got it.
SUNY Brockport.
But I can see where an RFP could come up with more ideas than just that, because I mean, I absolutely agree with you, and I see in young people, you know, that this is, I want to share something with you. When our agreement with Quail Summit with the senior program, I asked for a one of the events to be instruction on how to do TikTok dancing, because they have specific moves.
Yeah.
And you know what their answer was, what they did? They did a senior prom where seniors from the high school came
Mhm.
and did old people dancing with old people music. And it was fun, but it wasn't.
What you were
you-
getting at.
right,
Yeah.
And so this is what the point I want to make. Old people hear things differently than young people do. And you need a combination. You need all three elements, old, middle, and young, because that's what our population is. But it's critical to have young people, because those ideas, instead of us saying, oh, that's a stupid idea, they'll have a population that'll embrace it. And, you know, we're not going to be successful as a town if we don't start embracing that.
Well, when you talk about what Dick was talking about in the overarching, right, the communication is so important, because that then feeds into like recycling. We need to be doing a better job on promotion and education relative to recycling and reuse, which we haven't been doing this past year once we lost a key person, right?
Yes.
And all of those things that maybe this could then feed in. I mean, all of our town board stuff, everything, I feel like we're constantly getting criticized for communication, right? That's
Mhm. And then it's out, you know, other than the 4 different ways that it's out there.
right.
But I mean, we work with a group of kids that age at church, 19 to 29.
Mhm.
They don't read emails.
No,
They don't respond to email. They don't,
No,
know,
I know.
they don't pick up the phone.
They
They
don't.
text.
They
so,
text.
That's
yes.
so that's,
How many people, and I guess you wouldn't know the demographics, but how many people or families get the electronic newsletter?
It's about 1,000.
1,500.
Yeah,
was
it's
it?
just over 1,000.
Yeah.
You know, I was surprised that nobody last night from Lakewood showed up
mhm,
about that. You would think those people would be rabid
mhm.
for nobody
Yeah,
showed,
right.
unless perhaps that one woman, I don't know where she lived. but-
And that 1,500,
She was Lakewood
they
Meadows,
could be
I
multiples.
believe.
A
Correct.
lot of them are probably multiples.
Well,
So you might be-
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it just,
Right.
so you talk about social media, I think
Mhm.
personally, there's way too much of it.
No, there is.
Wonderful
yeah.
time waster. But something as basic as this newsletter didn't attract anybody to show up last night.
But it can't just be one. I'll give you, just this morning, I got a notification on my phone, Motion Junction has up 2,100 views in the last week, right? And that's its own complete separate page. It's only pertains to Motion Junction and nothing else pertaining to the town. I mean, truthfully, we may end up with like 20 or 25. I mean, every one of our parks has a separate Facebook page because people are checking in and tagging and everything else.
Could
It's
have to hire
creative.
a webmaster or
We
something.
need a,
Mhm.
yeah,
that's
a
not a-
communications
And that-
person.
that-
Absolutely.
That's actually where we should go. And I think if you do get a
Think I'll apply for
proposal,
that job.
they'll do it.
You're
gonna do it, Tom? Tom wants to do it.
I turn on?
You want to,
You know, we have a resource in terms of high school age.
that's what I was just going to bring up.
Yes.
You know, if any company that is worth their while would include the different generations. They would include the elementary school. I think primary is a little too early, but the elementary school, they would include the junior high, they would include the high school, they would include the college, and there'd be different means of communication for each. And they could overlap. I mean, college kids would enjoy seeing some Minions or something that the younger kids do. I enjoy it, but and a different group for the elderly. But you have all these elements within the town, and you have businesses that have ways of communicating with their people. I mean, certainly PACTIV does, the VA does, I know that. The college does, they all have this. How do you put it all together? So it's not such a dumb idea to have to think in terms of hiring a communications person. I think
Absolutely.
that's,
I think everything's on the table,
Yeah.
to take a look at that. Getting back to budget, I mean, where's the budget gonna come from? We have to get,
Right.
Well,
Well, our
we're-
budget,
We're at that stage right now where
Well-
you get to, it's pie in the sky. You make whatever request you can, just throw everything.
Doug always says,
You can
think
say-
big.
You can say, put anything down on paper that you want.
Yep.
It doesn't mean.
Get right out of the room, but fun.
Put anything down.
Yep.
$100,000.
Getting
I like
back
that.
to basics.
Yeah.
but that is a budget request,
The
right?
Go ahead,
there.
Tom.
The CIC, and I think you were originally in it, Patty. We're supposed to be monitoring goals. That's our mission plan. And again, there's crossover with the rest of these entities. If people in charge want us to expand to the LDC, the economic development and BID, you wonder if there's some cross purposes there. Should we be involved in that, or should we be restricted to monitoring the goals? If we're just monitoring goals, we certainly don't need to meet twice a month.
Yeah, I agree.
That's the question.
I
And
agree with you, but we
we're
do.
talking about
we do
budget.
need
I don't
some-
know
Mhm.
whether we get more outreach, and I don't know how you reach the 50-year-olds, much less the 30-year-olds that are.
Well, we
busting
have a
their
couple of
buns to
50-year-olds who
stay
ran for
alive.
office, so they must listen to something.
We're just weird.
You're just an enigma.
Yeah, we're just odd.
Our budget for 2022 is $1,400. We've spent 89.
Well, we can't buy,
I
we can't buy
donuts.
any more donuts.
That's it.
No, there was more than donuts in there. for
There
them.
was a little bit more, but it was not much.
But we
What,
spent
no.
that.
Again,
Yeah.
No.
getting back
Spend-
to the original question is what
Year to date is.
is our
$89.
mission, and should it be more?
It was the 14
And
before.
what do we need for
Well,
money
no, yeah, I'll tell you what it's
to
for.
accomplish it?
Town plan
And,
updates, 500, and strategic planning, 500. We have-
Should take about 5,000.
Well, the RFP, I mean, itself, right, in general, there's no cost to doing that. We just
Right,
put that
but just,
together.
I mean, the RFP, but to have somebody come in and look at. Like we had talked in the beginning, put an RFP out for improving.
Mhm.
Civic
communication.
engagement.
Mhm.
Well, so I tell you, there's lots of companies out there that's what they do.
Yeah.
And they're constantly calling and pitching whatever. And I would say on average, it's $15,000 to
Yes.
$20,000 a
I was
year
gonna say.
for a lot of these companies to take that over. Now, I'm not suggesting that that's what we want to do, but if we want a realistic placeholder, it probably should be somewhere in that 15 to 20 range. Now, it doesn't say we have to spend it all, but
Right.
just at least as a placeholder to,
Mhm.
For a contract relationship.
if it comes to that, right?
Yeah.
Getting back to Tom's question,
Mhm.
I would look forward to taking more and getting involved in more. In the economic development, I think we put a lot of time and effort into the comprehensive plan, which we refer to a lot in our strategic goals. I don't know, I just don't want to see the CIC go away but I do recognize that it has to be reshaped.
And how much cross-pollination with these
Yes,
other
yeah,
entities, and maybe they need to be consolidated.
Could, you're right, yeah.
The
What the boss said.
LDC, I think it is the most important. And maybe economic development and the BID should be incorporated in the LDC. Don't they all have common purpose?
There, yes and no.
Yeah.
So I mean, you could maybe have subsets and stuff. The bid is completely separate. That's a
Yeah.
separate taxing
Mhm.
entity organization. The town board is the board of directors of that. That's a complete separate thing. Now, that's not to say that there might be some things that parallel with economic development, but really when you boil that down, the bid itself, ultimately, the town board has to be in agreement with whatever tax we're going to be taxing the businesses for whatever improvements are being done for the bid. So that has to be a town board function. The LDC and the Economic Development Committee, the LDC is going to be more general, and they intentionally even said, right, for when we had the joint meeting between the town and the city and the chamber, they said they're going to try to keep it at the 30,000 foot version, more general version, where the Economic Development Committee, that's really where you could get into the nuts and bolts of the business retention like we talked about. So they kind of, there's similarities, but they all have some unique differences too.
Should economic development be merged into CIC?
Yes,
That would make sense.
yeah.
What
I,
if,
I like where this is going. You know, when we first started with the CIC, we had specific goals, specific things that we needed to work on. And we completed a lot of those. But I felt like, or feel like, you know, we're kind of just listening to the other committees, but we're not actually doing work like we used to. So maybe it's a good idea to just revitalize the whole CIC and find out how we can, you know, do things better, maybe consolidate some of the committees, and it will be more exciting than just sitting there listening to, you know, what the other committees have been doing. So I'm willing to work on more stuff,
Oh, okay.
along with Tom and Sal and Karen.
No, okay.
So right now, committees report to the CIC.
project
Project,
Teams.
sorry, project
project
teams.
teams?
What if the project, what if the CIC charged those teams with reporting to the town board rather than to the CIC? Just a thought, what if those are the reports, so those were the reports given, so you were more of a it was more of a supervisory rather than sitting and hearing the reports? What if you charged them with
So the updates would just,
the updates to
Go
the
to the
town
town
board? Then it's more of a supervisory, you know, committee making those decisions. I'm just kind of thinking about this out loud as I'm going through it. And then quarterly or twice a year, the committee, you know, you continue with those updates to the town board. So at least you can, instead of sitting and feeling like Oksana was saying, that you get reports from committees and that you just kind of sit and listen and nod and say thank you. Now you're kind of overarching and looking over that, and gives you time to get things done during the meetings and work on other projects and those the goals that you have. I don't know. I'm just
Sure.
throwing it out there, see if anything
Yeah.
sticks or tear it up.
But it's more than that. You know, the project teams, how often do we, 3 times a year?
twice
Twice
at
a year.
minimum, yeah.
We report to the town board, to the CIC.
CIC.
But there's I said this last meeting that with John Casey here. there's a communication that goes on in a room when there's people present that doesn't go on when there's no one present, obviously. And that communication, and many times, not all the time, but many times, is helpful to that project team to look in different areas. You know, there's ideas that come forward. You know, my mind's full. I have to have someone else to give me ideas. It's hard for me to come up with more myself, although I try. And I see that in every meeting. There's something that, you know, talking about a communications person or element, that's something that comes up in these discussions. So I think it's important that they also communicate with the CIC, because this is where most of the discussion comes in, because the town board has this stupid thing called privilege of the floor. There you can only talk for 3 minutes, and that's not enough.
Let me throw a crazy idea, hypothetical idea, building off of what actually all three of you said. Think about the way this, I think about also what Oksana was saying, the way this has worked in the past. The CIC was kind of the entity that was kind of driving the bus, and they were saying, okay, here's the priorities, here's what we should be working on. Town board, do you agree with us? And then we were kind of going from there. And really the CIC was always kind of leading to the next point. Now think about what Jared just said about the project teams, right? So last year we had strategic planning, created these project teams. The town board said, yes, we agree, and created the project, or didn't create the project teams, the CIC did, but agreed with the goals, right? Now, hypothetically say that those project teams are reporting to the town board, but maybe it's a monthly report or whatever, but maybe to your point, twice a year, the town board holds a joint project team, brings all the project teams together, including the CIC, for a discussion more than a traditional town
And
board
that's where
meeting.
you would have the time to get in.
Right.
Because that's true. I mean, that's, we are kind of handcuffed with those rules.
Oh,
But we-
I
Rules of our
absolutely
own, no,
understand.
it's frustrating too, on the other, on the listening end,
I understand that.
so you don't open a huge door.
Exactly.
That might be a good idea, to have an open meeting, have it in there, have a big round table, and it's a discussion to bounce ideas off back and forth.
And then the CIC could continue its work to be leading the next initiative. So for instance, for 23, instead of the CIC worried about what the history team is doing or what the conservation easement team is doing and all that stuff, you get that twice a year workshop, but the CIC is focused on the next thing. Maybe that's citizen engagement. Maybe that's the next thing, whatever the next thing is. Maybe it's economic development or some piece.
I think it's just the citizen engagement. I think that's a critical factor, and I think that's something we should be focusing on initially
And those,
this year.
those reports to town, to the meetings, you know, the semi-annual reports would then free you up to do some of those other
Do other
things.
work.
Yes.
Do the other work during that other time.
Yes.
So let's circle back, because
Yeah.
it's
To the
10
budget.
o'clock to the
Yeah.
budget, and 20,000 were an RFP or
No,
something.
that was a 20,000-foot look.
Right?
No, he said 32,000 feet, I think.
Oh, I thought it was 20,000.
Or 36, no.
$2,000 for done.
So we should set a max, because we can always get slashed later.
Well, I heard two things. I heard today